Oma Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
On speaking strongly in Srila Prabhupada's service. And that's the title that I gave in one article in one of my books. So it's along those lines. I wrote, that comes in that book, My Memories of Srila Prabhupada. I wrote one essay which had over 100 quotes from Srila Prabhupada plus from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Gaura-Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj also, about why we should and must speak strongly in service to the Guru. Now I came to write that essay because I was so fed up of people telling me not to speak strongly. And particularly, there's one particular incident where in London I was brought to speak in a Sai Baba temple, and I was asked before I went there not to say anything against Sai Baba. It means that rascal from South India, not the local rascal. So, anyway, I didn't say anything against him. I gave a lecture. And then someone at the end of the class asked a few challenging questions. And I pointed out to him that, you're talking such big talk, but you're such a fool, you're worshipping this idiot as God. And you don't know anything. And I didn't know, but he happened to be the owner of the temple. So, our devotees were no longer allowed to give classes in the temple. They were very upset. Or the particular devotee who invited me was upset and said, So I said, well, it's good actually, because you'll have to give a class somewhere else, and then it's better because you can just say what you have to say without being compromised. And he was upset, and then the next time I saw him, he said, actually it's true, we have a better place now, and we can just speak as we need to speak. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he was asked, why are you building new temples? There are already so many temples. He said, we need a place where we can speak our own message without compromise. We may go to other places to preach, but we need our own place where we can speak without having to, without being thrown out, without having to find a new place every time. It's not that we should compromise our message, but we need somewhere where we can systematically teach also. Of course, nowadays we're finding even within our own ISKCON, I don't know, ISKCON is a big movement, so it's different in different places, and the atmosphere and everything. A lot depends on the local leaders. So in a lot of places, but some places we also find devotees don't speak too strongly. People will get upset, which is quite possible. It's quite possible that if we speak strongly, people will get upset. See, our movement, in many ways, is different from the 1970s. Different means chanting Hare Krishna is going on. Basic things are there. But the way the movement's developed in so many ways is different. Prabhupada, you see, he was speaking very strongly. We'll find in Prabhupada's books, now we have this folio, you can do a search for words. So apart from words like and but, and the, and this, we'll probably find the word that Prabhupada uses most is Krishna. And you'll also find very high in Prabhupada's word usage, much higher than in practically anyone else's word usage. We'll find words like fool, rascal, nonsense, animal, etc. So in the 1970s, devotees, they tended to speak in the way that Srila Prabhupada spoke. And our movement was known as an aggressive movement. It came to be known as an aggressive movement. For the devotees' zealous preaching and for the methods of distributing books. Once Srila Prabhupada was shown a cartoon strip from a newspaper in America where it showed a devotee walking in one direction and then someone else, what we would call a karmi, walking. Nowadays, you might get, if you say karmi, sometimes I shouldn't say that. Anyway, Prabhupada used to say karma, walking in the other direction, and then they meet, and the devotee is showing him a book. And then in the next cartoon picture, there's a typical cartoon scene of a cloud of dust with fists coming out of it, means they're having a scrap fight. And in the next one, the karmi's on the ground with a book rammed in his throat, and the devotee's walking away, counting money. So apparently when Prabhupada saw this, he chuckled. That cartoon was a statement of how many people saw our book distribution, and our movement became unpopular in America because of this. The general perception of our movement was of people who, they go to airports especially and force you to take books. Actually, when Prabhupada was asked about this, he said there's no question of force. Every salesman has his tactics. And ultimately it's up to you whether you buy or not. But there was a lot of propaganda in the newspapers and everything against our movement. Personally, I feel that it wasn't so much the tactics, because there's all kinds of things which are advertised, using all kinds of tactics. But they don't like the content. That's the real problem. They don't want to face up to what's in the books. So rather than take up the discussion of what is the subject matter of the books, they make big propaganda, all these Hare Krishna people, they're cheating us. And they don't mind being cheated by the regular advertisements, which are all just cheating. It's a cheating business. They make you think you're going to see, there's no need of an advertisement business. If the product is good, and you need it, and you have the money to buy it, then you'll buy it. At least the advertisement should be just, it is available. This is its specifications. But they make a whole imaginary idea. Just like cigarette, any advertisement, cigarette, whatever it is, a beautiful woman is shown, with the idea that if you smoke this cigarette, a beautiful woman will come. And anyone who's got any brain, which makes you think that not many people have much brain, they'll understand that this is just nonsense. Because if you smoke a cigarette, whatever cigarette it is, that the beautiful woman doesn't come. Probably they'll go away if you smoke cigarettes. So, but people there's no protest against this cheating. But if we distribute the books somewhat forcefully or whatever, then they become upset. So, it just proves what's in the books, that they're all rascals. But this aggressiveness was being taken up, and our movement got a bad reputation for that. And actually, in many ways, it may not have been necessary to have been so aggressive. And in many ways, our movement has matured. So, at one point in time within our movement, there was... Within our movement means, I'm not talking about so much in India, because in some ways our movement has grown up differently in India than it has in the West, because it's a different cultural milieu altogether. After all, in India, people in general know something about Krishna, and many people are open to hearing about Krishna. Whereas in the Western countries, it's not like that. It's a different culture altogether. So our movement has grown up somewhat differently in the West. And in the West, at one point in time, there was a lot of stress by the devotees. To all these enthusiastic preachers that don't speak so strongly, don't make people upset. So Prabhupada also mentions in one purport that he's discussing how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Mayavadis at Varanasi, and very sweetly, by his very humble behavior, he was able to attract their minds. So Prabhupada said that we should also do like that. Then, I can't remember the same purport or another purport, he says we should try to attract people by reasonable behavior, or if that doesn't work, kick on their heads. So there are both things. Carrot and stick. You know this example? Carrot and stick. A donkey is known as a stubborn animal. Sometimes we call someone an ass. It means they're very stubborn. So an ass, one way to get it to move is to hold a carrot in front of it, and then it will move towards it. And if that doesn't work, then you hit it from behind with a stick. So they're both tempters. Both things. So there's a lot of problems. Maybe we should try a more indirect approach, and then so many different things were said. And in general, our movement is more mild now than it used to be. It's not so likely that if someone meets a devotee of Krishna in the Western countries, not so likely as previously, that he will be very strongly preached to. So if someone is strongly preached to, they may feel upset about that. In fact, in the Western countries, especially in the countries which are culturally dominating the world, that means particularly Britain and America, these two countries. America is dominating the world in all respects, militarily, economically, culturally. We say culture because there's not actually culture, but there's no other word in English to use. They're not at all culture, but in the sense of a way of life. American hegemony is there all over the world. And Britain also, because they're very closely related. And a lot of the nonsense that gets spread all over the world actually originates in Britain and in North Europe in general. So there is a social stigma. It's considered, within that culture, it's considered that there is something wrong with proselytizing. Proselytizing means trying to convince someone to take up your religious path, to convert people, to vigorously try to convert people. Because there is the general idea, which was first coined by an Indian rascal, that all paths are the same. Joto mat, tato pat. This is true. All paths are the same for people who do not surrender to Krishna. They all lead to hell. Therefore, Krishna says, Sarvadhaman parityaja, give up all those nonsense paths. Mamekam sharanam raja, surrender to me only. So all paths except one are more or less the same. They're different varieties of not surrendering to Krishna. So the so-called Paramahamsa Ramakrishna, in that respect, was correct. He has gone to hell, and everyone else following him is also going to hell. He's going to hell means he went back to hell heaven. That's where he came from. So, in the Western countries also, there's this very strong ethos of misunderstanding, which is passed off in the name of tolerance, is that we should tolerate all opinions. So this sounds very reasonable, doesn't it? It sounds very reasonable that we should tolerate all opinions. But it is based, it sounds very reasonable and civilized, but actually it is demoniac. And I'll tell you why. Because it's based on the demoniac misconception that there is no absolute truth, and that therefore any opinion is as good as any other, because there's no actual, specific, factual reality. That this idea is demoniac is stated by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Does anyone know the verse? Only Bhakti Shastris. Hone wale Bhakti Shastris. Does anyone know the verse? Among the street, no, that's not it. No, getting closer. Asatyam apratishtam te. Who said that? Asatyam apratishtam te. That is what those who are description of the demoniac. There is no absolute truth. There is no substantial basis to this universe. This is the opinion of demoniac people. So they say that all opinions are as good as any other. And it sounds as if they're being very reasonable. But actually, by saying this, they are denying the absolute fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, it's like Prabhupada gave the example of the honest thieves. That after stealing, a gang of thieves, after stealing, they got together and they said, okay, let's honestly and morally divide the loot. Loot, this is an English word. It's come from Hindi, not necessarily from Sanskrit. Let us divide that means we stole all this money, now we should divide it fairly between us. So they're very fair thieves. But the very profession of being a thief is dishonest. So the idea that we shall all be very reasonable and tolerant of each other, that means we are reasonably and tolerating everyone else's rascaldom. I'm a rascal, you are a rascal, and we'll simply tolerate each other. This is encapsulated in the English language version of Joto Mat Toto Pad, which is the title of a famous book which you can now buy on Indian train bookstores. The title is I'm okay, you're okay. When this was brought to Prabhupada, he said, that is not our philosophy. Our philosophy is I'm okay, you are not okay. I'm chanting Hare Krishna, you're not. So I'm okay, you're okay. This more or less means that I'm a rascal, you're a rascal, so we'll all be rascals together and tolerate each other. So this idea that we shouldn't speak strongly, we should simply tolerate all others, and people will think we're very reasonable. And then people will like us. So maybe it's so. Recently I saw an article which came in the Los Angeles Times. Somehow or other I saw it. I don't know how I saw it. And it was about our devotees. And it was a very, what we would call a favorable article. And they're saying it's very peaceful, very nice. One of the things that the reporter said that no one tried to proselytizing. In other words, when I walked in, they didn't immediately take me to the bathroom and shake me up and tell me to give up meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, intoxication, and so on. So that is considered very good in the Western world, but we don't proselytize. You can have advertisements telling people to drink, smoke, go to hell and all this kind of thing, but you can preach anything, but don't preach about God. Everyone should have their own opinion. You should just be able to choose and form your own opinion. They don't say that in the school classrooms, that you simply will teach you all these things and then you choose and give your own opinion. They have exams. And if you give what is different according to their opinion, then they'll give you a failure mark. So, it's hypocritical. But there's this idea that people will like us, and maybe it's true that people will like us more if we don't preach very strongly. But that liking, what kind of liking will that be? That will be the shallow liking that typifies material life, where people simply smile at each other, but they don't give a damn about each other. It's just tolerate. You do what you want, I'll do what I want. You're going to hell? Okay, you go to hell. I'm also going to hell, but in my own way. You go in your own way. So that is not partaking in this shallow, hypocritical, supposedly nice ethos may make people accept us. See, there came a very strong, at one point in time I always thought, well, we should be more accepted. So we didn't have these problems so much in India, because in the beginning there was a lot of hesitation about our movement. In the 1970s, there was a lot of propaganda that our movement was the CIA and so many different things. That's changed now, and our movement is well accepted in India, and it would naturally be supposed so. But in the Western countries, there were a lot of problems. Problems means that people didn't like to accept us, and they thought it was strange. And not everyone, but in general, what is called the establishment, that means the powers that be, the press and the media, there's bad publicity against us, saying that these, so many bad things. People tend to think we were strange. It was in the 1970s to go out in the streets of the Western countries with a shaved head, orange dhoti, or sari, whatever. It was something quite sensational. That Shyamasundar Prabhu related that Shyamasundar, one of the first disciples of Prabhupada, Prabhupada had at least 3 disciples called Shyamasundar, but the first one, he related that once he was walking down Regent Street, which is one of the poshest streets, or the famous streets in London, with George Harrison, which you've all heard of now. You've all heard of George Harrison after he died. So, George turned to Shyamasundar and said, "This is a first." It means it's the first time it's happened to me, that people are looking at you more than me. Because normally wherever he went, George Harrison, But instead they were looking at him because he had a shaved head and a dhoti and all this. Nowadays, if you walk down the streets in London, and especially central London, no one looks twice because they've seen our devotees for so many years. And to be abnormal has become normal. That if you see someone walking down the street with one strand of hair sticking out like this bright green, and another one like this bright pink, and then a dead snake wrapped around his head like this, whatever. I mean, I didn't see that particularly, but people do try to make themselves notice. And in big cities like London and New York, people, they make a point that particularly if someone dresses in the most outlandish style, they won't treat him as if different, and they won't look at him twice. because they don't want to give them any credit for being different. So it's become extremely cosmopolitan. And devotees, they're considered quite normal. Actually, quite often happens to me in central London that tourists walk up to me and say, well, you know how we go here and there because they presume that we are part of central London. We should know how to go here and there. It's part of the central London scene. And devotees are walking around. It's not strange anymore. It's considered normal. So our devotees have become accepted as normal. Recently I saw a report on the last Rath Yatra that was held in London, and it got, thanks to the efforts of some of our devotees, it got unprecedented media coverage as one of the biggest Hindu festivals outside of India, of course. Anyway, so afterwards, after it was all over, a big wig from the BBC phoned and spoke to one of our devotees and said, now you are part of the establishment. And you have that term in America, I say the establishment? Yeah. So it means the what does it mean? How do you explain? It means like the accepted order of how things should be, the core of society, that which is considered proper. Now that's very interesting because our movement started in the 1960s and the 1970s in the Western countries, and was the first people who joined were almost all from the hippie, what do you call it, hippie cult or whatever, hippies, they were hippies. So the hippies, their whole thing was to rebel against the establishment. So our movement was identified, although Prabhupada didn't like our movement to be identified with the hippies, but at the same time he recognized that the hippies were the ones who were joining the most. So the hippies, mostly all the hippies, they've gone back to normal society and become part of the establishment. And as a matter of fact, it seems that not George Bush, but Bill Clinton, he was somewhat of a hippie at one point in time, and Tony Blair, he was also. So, as Jayaveda Maharaj says, the real hippies, they joined the Hare Krishna movement. They were looking for the alternative. So anyway, a member of the BBC, and in England, the BBC, the Queen and the BBC, they represent, this is really the establishment. So he said that now you become part of the establishment. So I don't know whether to be happy or sad that we became part of the establishment. Happy that we're accepted, but have we compromised? Actually, I'm getting into another subject now. It's a much bigger topic of the whole status of our movement, because it all goes together. The thing is that once we start thinking that, we have to speak in a way that people will accept it better, well, that's true. If we speak very strongly and alienate people, then they won't listen to what we say. That's true. So we have to be careful what we say. But on the other hand, if we only speak in such a manner that people will like what we say, then we won't be able to speak Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because people don't like Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because they are mudha, dushkriti, naradana, maya jnana, and in general they're dushkriti, they're rascals. So in general they won't like it. If we tell them what has to be told, they won't like it. This is the problem. So, if we become too much concerned with what the public thinks, then we cease to be Krishna Das and we become public Das. Public das means prostitute, actually. Prostitute makes herself attractive to men in general. And she presents herself as is pleasing to others and has no personal principles. Her only principle is how to be accepted to others for her own personal gain. So in the same way, if we become too much concerned with what the public thinks, and then we become false and insincere. If we become too much concerned with what they think or how they will like us instead of what they need to hear. There are two things, what they want to hear and what they need to hear. The two things are different. What they want to hear is the politician's speech. The politician tells them, you are so nice, you are so wonderful, you are so great. And people think, oh, he's right. I should vote for him. He's a very intelligent man. What they need to hear, they need to hear after the politician gets voted in. Need to means from his point of view. Now we have to increase the taxes. No politician in his manifesto says, we are going to increase the taxes, we're going to increase the prices, railway prices, diesel prices. No one says that. Is it? Does any politician come out and say, my dear fellow citizens, please vote for me and we will increase your taxes. We will increase at every budget, no, even between the budget, every month, we will increase the price of petrol and diesel. And at every railway budget, the price will go up. No one will say like that. But when they come in power, they do it. They're politicians, hypocritical. They only speak what people want to hear. Now, that we may speak what people like to hear to gain their attention is a preaching tactic which Srila Prabhupada recommended on the authority of Prabhupada Saraswati. How's that verse go? Tante Vidhaya Janakam. I know, as usual. I'm a fool. I always forget the verse. Anyway. Prabhupada several times when he was asked, how should we preach? I happened to be present one time when he was asked this. How should we preach? And Prabhupada paraphrased Prabodhananda Saraswati, that you just go up to a person and say, my dear sir, you are so wonderful. You are so great. And then Prabhupada said, then the rascal will think, oh, he's speaking the truth. Then what do you want from me? Then you should say to him, then just give up your nonsense hogwash ideas and surrender at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. So we may flatter people to gain their attention. There is some scope for that. But not that we go on flattering them. Because that is not being nice. That is actually envy of others. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that the worst violence one can commit, worse than killing others, bodies, or beating them, is to fail to deliver Harikatha to them. So if we are simply nice to people, you are so nice, you are so wonderful, but we fail to point out to them how their life is in need of reform, then we are actually being violent. Just like that is stated, criminal neglect. If a doctor, if there's a patient in the doctor's care, or even if there's say there's an accident and a doctor's there happens to be carrying bandages and all these kind of things. And the person's lying there bleeding and the doctor just looks. And the person dies. Then that doctor can be charged with criminal neglect. I didn't do anything. That's right. You didn't do anything. That's why you are wrong. Because you didn't do anything. You have the knowledge how to treat him and the wherewithal how to do so, but you failed to do so. Therefore you are criminal. So in the same way, if one has the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, but fails to deliver it to others, then he is criminally neglectful. So he may say, well, we should just speak in a nice way so that people can accept it. We'll just emphasize the good things. And we shouldn't call anyone a rascal or any such thing. So, that is possible. But sometimes, you see, if a doctor, he says, well, from now on, I'm only going to treat my patients nicely. Why should I cause any pain to them? So someone comes in with a big boil. Well, I'm just going to blow on it. Just blow. That's not his duty. His duty is to lance it. And it's very painful. I have personal experience many times. And many boils and abscesses. So there comes a point, the dentist, at some point, he has to wrench the tooth out. It's painful. Even if you use anesthetic, well, the anesthetic wears off. And then you feel the pain. So if you think that, well, I don't want to cause any pain, but they're already in pain. And sometimes pain is required to treat the pain. And if you don't treat the pain by giving pain, then the pain will simply continue and get worse. So sometimes it may be necessary to speak strongly. Of course, that requires some expertise. We don't recommend that someone, after hearing one class, then they go and they be sent out to preach. There should be some training. But on the other hand, if we fail to speak Krishna consciousness, or the absolute truth as it is, the truth is, as Krishna says, Namam Dushkrishna Mudha Prapadyante Naradama. This is part of the truth. It's true that Krishna is very beautiful, very sweet. That's true. We should preach that. But we should also preach that Krishna says, these people are fools and rascals. If we fail to do so, then we're not fully representing Krishna. What we are representing is our own sentimentalized idea of what we think Krishna should be like, which is actually offensive to Krishna. If we think it's not right to use words like fool and rascal, then indirectly we're blaming Krishna as not being of right discrimination. That Krishna is unkind to others by calling them fools and rascals. No, that is Krishna's kindness. That is our own enviousness of Krishna and our own puffed upness. If we think that I shall not say fool, rascal, nonsense and all these things. That means we think we know how to speak better than Krishna. Prabhupada sometimes, you see sometimes people say, well, only you shouldn't speak strongly. Prabhupada can do like that. And you can't. Because you may upset people. Prabhupada upset people. In one Pandal program in Bombay, Prabhupada was speaking so strongly, by the time when he started, the Pandal was almost full. By the time he finished, it was almost empty. People couldn't tolerate it. He was speaking so strongly. Afterwards, Prabhupada said, therefore, book distribution is better preaching. Because people tend not to become so upset. It's in a book. It's not directly telling you. But Prabhupada told that he didn't stop speaking strongly because people didn't like it. There are many instances. One hippie in Delhi, Prabhupada called him on the stage and in front of thousands of people, Prabhupada was shouting at him and the hippie was shouting back. When one man stood up and said, I am God, Prabhupada said, you are dog. We laugh. Do we have the courage to say so? He's a dog. Only a dog. Only one person can say, I am God, and that's Krishna. Anyone else who says that is simply a dog. Rascal. Dog means a doggish intelligence. So, Prabhupada saying you are a dog to him, what did that person feel when he was called a dog? He must have felt, very horrible. In front of so many people I'm being humiliated. Actually everyone clapped. There's a public program and then the person sat down. So how did that person, he felt crushed. He felt hurt. Is it proper that a Vaishnava should hurt others' feelings? In this case, the person was feeling hurt. But he was put in his place. He was put in his place. If Prabhupada had tried to discuss that, well, actually, you see, your Jiva Tattva, there's Vishnu Tattva, Jiva Tattva, and this and that. The man was an arrogant rascal. He's not a person to be dealt with philosophical discussion. Put him in his place immediately. His feelings were hurt. Good. Very good. He was humiliated in public. Good. That is the right medicine for such a person. Because if he has any trace of sincerity, then he will understand. He will think about it and he will understand. Yes, actually it's true. I'm a dog. How could I be such a rascal as to stand up and say, I am God? And if he has no sincerity, then at least he's shut up and everyone else can see that actually he's a dog, he's not God. So the other people are saved from his nonsense propaganda. And also, he has the good fortune to be chastised by pure devotee of Krishna. That is his good fortune. Of course you may say, well, we are not so realized, so we can't speak on that level. This sounds like it could be a very convincing argument. Then on the other hand, what should we do? Should we wait till we're fully realized before we speak Bhagavad Gita as it is? And then Bhagavad Gita as it is will never be spoken. Because a devotee never thinks, now I'm realized. Rather, we should take the order of the whole parampara. I mean, it's not that Prabhupada was he was exceptional in that sense. He was exceptional in so many senses, but he said that my only qualification is I simply repeated what my spiritual master told me. And you'll find our whole parampara is like that. Everyone, because Krishna speaks like that, and all the acharyas, they speak like that. Now it's not that in every lecture or every time they meet someone that they say, dog, rascal, fool, nonsense. It's not that all the time. But that is certainly part of their standard repertoire. Because an acharya means one who speaks the truth, preacher. Everyone, when you say acharya doesn't mean someone up in the sky somewhere, just flying in from Vaikuntha every so often. Acharya means a preacher. Every preacher is supposed to be an acharya. Achinoti ashastrani. Achinoti ashastrani. Acharya stapyati api. I left out one line. Acharyas tena kirtitaha. Swayam acharate yasmat acharyas tena kirtitaha. Acharya means who speaks according to Shastra, who establishes the message of Shastra, and who acts according to Shastra. So every preacher is supposed to be an acharya. Of course there are different levels, we may say. But everyone is supposed to preach and behave as a preacher is supposed to behave according to Shastra also, and speak according to Shastra. An acharya is supposed to speak the truth. If we don't speak the truth, then we become cheaters like everyone else in society. Simply trying to... There are different kinds of people in society. Some people are just blatantly nasty. And others, they try to live nicely with each other. But living nicely for the sake of mutual sense gratification, this is rascaldom. Even though someone may behave nicely, if their goal of they may behave nicely means when they see you, hello, how are you? Smile at you. But if their aim is mutual sense gratification, then they're not nice. It's just a veneer of niceness over exploitation and nastiness. So a devotee should speak the truth, and we can't expect that in a society of rascals the truth will be very popular. By nature, our message is unpopular. If we're going to preach Krishna consciousness, we can't expect that the main result of that will be popularity. If popularity is our aim, then you become Asharam Baba or Ravi Shankar or Osho or something like that. What is our aim? The truth. We want the truth. That may not be very popular. Prabhupada said that he gave the example many times. He gave the example. If you sell diamonds, there may not be many customers. If you sell glass bangles, there are so many customers. The same thing Osho, if you preach, just have sex, then there may be many people. Okay, fine. Sounds good to me. But if we say don't have sex, only under restriction, not very popular. So what should we say? Everything is okay, everything is wonderful, everything is fine. If we say like that, then why should people come to Krishna consciousness? Rather, I'm okay, you're not okay. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with eating meat, drinking wine. Actually, it's very interesting. In January, I think it was, I saw a drama that was enacted. It was done at one of our temples here in India. And it was a drama of a jamya, and it was invited the public. There was a few thousand people. So they invited the public, and it was the first public drama done in this area. So they did the story of a jamya. And as a prelude, they showed a normal man in modern India. That means he showed a few scenes. That means he gets up in the morning, goes to has breakfast with his kids, he feeds his kids a bit. Then he says, what would you like? And one says, I want a Casio. And another says this. And then he comes back in the evening and gives them all gifts. And then they're all very happy. And then the next one he goes off to work again and comes back. Then he has a heart attack. And the Yamadutas come and get him. And then it goes on with the story of the Jana. And afterwards, people were asking, but why that man in the beginning? Why did the Yamadutas come to get him? He's just a normal person like me. Means they're going to come and get me too? Oh, actually I forgot, there's one other scene I forgot. That it shows him being nice to his family and bringing them gifts. And then there's one scene him sitting in a chair saying, "Merely a bhakti karna ka koi jarur nahi hai." There's no need for me to do bhakti. मैं किसी को द्वेष नहीं करता हूं, मैं अच्छा आदमी हूं. I don't hate anyone, I don't dislike, I don't do any harm to anyone. I'm a good man. But the Yamadutas came to get him. So it's like that. People are nice, they're reasonable, this, that. But unless they're Krishna conscious, they're going to hell. Because their so-called niceness is a manifestation of envy of Krishna. I am the maintainer of my family. I am giving gifts to my children. He's taking the position of God within his own family. My wife serves me. My children adore me. He's artificially taking the position of God. He wants to think, Ishvaraham ham bhogi siddhoham bhagavan sukhi. So, strong speaking is required. And unless we do this, then actually what will happen, we'll become like Asharam, art of living, art of going to hell, I call it. Where you see the guy smiles, has this big smile, and everyone likes him, because he praises everyone, and tells a few stories and jokes, and tells them, you are all God. Ishwar ko mano. So, jeev hi Ishwar hai. So, what is all this rascal? Oh, in this art of going to hell thing, they don't talk anything, it's just some kind of making people feel good about themselves. Don't worry, just relax, and I don't know exactly what they're saying. And with some pretense of being religious. And there are so many things. And you get this was that Dongi Maharaj from Pune? Dongi. He's from Pune? Somewhere from Maharashtra. So, it's the same thing, tell all stories, nice, be nice. He's a Mayavadi. People think he's a great bhakta. But he is a big rascal. Because he told stories of Krishna, people thought he's a bhakta. Ultimately, he's a Mayavadi. Once we were in Nagpur, and we didn't have any center there. I was out of the Padayatra. This was 1989. I remember it was just after I took sannyas. So, this Dongi Maharaj was coming to the Dharamshala where we were staying for some function or other. We happened to be there with the Gaunitai deities everywhere. And the devotee in charge of the Padayatra said, well, let's have a kirtan to greet him. And I said, no, I don't want to do a kirtan to greet these rascals. Anyway, he insisted, so I joined in also. So he had a kirtan wavering the gate with Gaunitai deities. He walked right past and didn't hear it. Such a rascal. All the devotees were upset. I wasn't surprised, because I know he's a rascal. So if we don't speak the truth, if we don't speak to benefit people, if we simply speak be nice and try to attract people and many people come and join, then we may get many followers. But it won't be the parampara as given to us by our acharyas. It'll be something like that. And then everything will become watered down. Step by step. That everything's nice, everyone's nice, everything's good. And what's the difference between being a devotee and not being a devotee? Or what's the difference between Prabhupada and Dongi Maharaj. What's the difference? Maybe he's a great scholar, spoke on the Bhagavatam. So many people believed in Krishna because of him. You don't differentiate, then you actually become Mayavadi. And there'll be no particular, the only principle left will be how to bring many followers. That's all. Unless we preach Krishna consciousness as it is, everything will be finished. Everything will be spoiled. We see, just like Ramanuja Sampradaya nowadays. Don't mind, you may not like what I'm going to say, but it's the truth. That such a wonderful Sampradaya with so many great devotees, Ramanuja Acharya was speaking so strongly against Mayavad, but now you'll see most people so-called Ramanuja Sampradaya, they're all Mayavadis. And many of them, who's from traditional Iyengar families, means Ramanuja, Brahmin families, that still on their altar they worship whatever, maybe Balaji, Tirupati Balaji, or Ranganatha Swami, or whichever particular deity form has been worshipped in their family for generations. But alongside, they'll be worshipping Sai Baba, or this so-called Kalki avatar who escaped from the LIC office in Vellore, I think it was, in Tamil. He was in the LIC office, and then one day he realized, actually I'm God. Why should I simply be an LIC officer? Better to be God. And so many Iyengars, they're coming in such a nice sampradaya, they've also become complete rascals by worshipping this rascal. If you worship a rascal, you become a rascal. And even they're also they may be doing Sharadhan Puja, mostly they don't, but they may be also. But why has that come? Because there's no preaching in their sampradaya. There's no education and there's no preaching. There may be some preaching, particularly in one, the Chinna Jiya Swami in Andhra Pradesh. He's doing some preaching. He has many followers, but actually there's no real life in it. Even many people come and they have a vague idea, they have a general idea of Vishnu Bhakti. But there's no strong preaching. Therefore, it is only a vague idea. They'll mix up with all Mayavadis. They don't discriminate. It's all dharma, it's all good, it's all wonderful. No. Savadhaman Parityatya Mamekam Sharanam Raja. That is our message. We should never get mixed up with these rascals. We should know this is the truth. Everything else, except Bhagavad Gita as it is all simply cheating. That's all. So unless we preach strongly, then we'll simply become another Hindu movement. What is the use? Then what was the use of Prabhupada coming and preaching? If he was simply to make some vegetarians. Sometimes supposedly devotees, members of ISKCON tell me that, well, Sai Baba, it's also quite good because people who follow him, mostly they become vegetarian. I tell them that it would be better they ate meat and didn't follow Sai Baba. They would be less offensive to Krishna. It is less sinful to be a meat eater and not think that Sai Baba is God than to be a vegetarian and think he is God. It is a far greater offense to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to consider that rascal or any other such rascal as God. It's a very severe offense. So you'll find practically everyone who we're dealing with, they're all actually offenders because they're all infected by Mayavadi, Krishna, Aparad. Everyone thinks this Mayavad idea that you can just consider anyone or anything God. So here in this area, this local Sai Baba, people, they think he's God, and they think Ganapati is our Ishtadeva. So many nonsense things. It's actually nonsense. And it's actually, even though people may be superficially pious, their piety is misplaced. As a result of which, while apparently being pious, they're actually practicing envy of Krishna. Demigod worship is envy of Krishna. Worshipping all these bogus incarnations is all envy of Krishna. Anything which is not Bhagavad Gita as it is, even this mixed up so-called Vaishnavism, like this Gandhi Maharaj and others, it's all enviousness of Krishna. So we have to very clearly understand this. Otherwise we ourselves will simply become Mayavadis in the dress of Vaishnavas. And we have to speak it out also. And people may become upset, which will just prove that they're rascals. They may become upset, or they may change. If they change, that is their good fortune. If they don't change, that's their misfortune. But if we don't tell the truth, then there's no possibility that they'll change. If we simply say, yes, everything you're doing is very nice, then they're definitely going to go to hell. If we tell the truth, that this is wrong, you have to surrender to Krishna, they may get upset. It is a risk. Prabhupada said preaching is taking risks. But if they listen to what we say, then they will be saved from repeated birth and death, and they will come to Krishna. So preaching doesn't mean only speaking strong, it also means giving prasadam, holding public festivals, building temples, so many different things are required in preaching. But having done all these things, building temples, holding festivals, and if we, having done all that, we withhold the message of Krishna, then it simply becomes a big entertainment, that's all. Our festivals simply become spiritual entertainment, which is what all these guys, Asharam, all these rascals, what are they? They are pseudo-spiritual entertainers, that's all. They have nothing substantial to give people. So I also see that in India there are many initiated devotees who, even though they're initiated, when these so-called famous Kathakas come to town, they'll also go and listen to them. And they watch them on TV. Why is that? They haven't actually become devotees. They're pious people who are chanting Hare Krishna. Maybe. We don't know what the quality of their chanting is. And they may be following the four regulated principles, but they haven't actually become devotees because they have not subscribed to the principle of Savadhaman Parityaja Namekam Sharanam Vraja. Because no one has told them, because they're being nice to them, and they think we made them a devotee. We didn't make a devotee. If someone, the other day I went to the house of an initiated devotee, and I saw on his altar, he had demigods, he had Radha, Krishna, and so many things. But also demigods and his old Kula Guru. So I said to him, what's this? You're initiated and you're still attached to all these things? And I got in his case a bit. He said, Maharaj, why don't you chant Hare Krishna a bit? I said, this is kirtan. This is the kirtan you need to hear. Not the Mahamantra. You heard the Mahamantra so many times, but you didn't understand anything. You hear this kirtan. How to be freed from your anarthas. What is that? Siddhanta Alash Jan Anartha to Charena. This is the words of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Those who are lazy in the matter of understanding the Siddhanta, they can never give up anarthas. If you don't want to hear what is the truth, then even if we're supposedly initiated devotees, then we can never make any progress in Krishna consciousness. So we need to hear ourselves, and we need to tell others. Otherwise, what you're going to find, that we're the people, I am a member of ISKCON, but I also follow Kalki Bhagavan. You don't know Kalki Bhagavan. He didn't his fame didn't reach this far yet, his infamy. But it's all the same. They won't distinguish what is the real thing and what is not. And then you'll see that then our own devotees will be in competition with ashram and company. Because if we're not giving the substance, the fact, then what is left? Entertainment. And these guys, these near ashram and others, they're expert entertainers. So we're going to be the losers. If we come to the platform of entertainment only, these guys are way ahead of us. What do we have to offer people? If it's simply telling some nice stories about Krishna, then there's already this Kripaluji Maharaj is now coming up. He's an old man. Many years ago he molested a young girl and was put in prison for that. But he's now discovered the internet and all these things, and he's becoming a big shot nowadays. So these guys, they're already expert. There's a whole industry in India of entertainment in the name of Bhakti. With your Anup Jalota and your in Vrindavan they have these Ras Leela groups, and it's entertainment, commercial. So if we only want to entertain people and be nice, and it may be Krishna, maybe that we're speaking about Krishna, but it's not speaking about Krishna in the way that our Acharya spoke about Krishna. And the result will be that we may get a few sentimental followers who don't really follow anything anyway, and who don't have faith in the words of Krishna, because when we speak the words of Krishna, they get upset. If we speak Sarvadhamam Parittaja Namam Dushkritino Mudha, then sometimes some of our own so-called devotees become upset. What does that mean? Why are they upset? Because they are Mudha themselves. They themselves don't want to surrender to Krishna. And they get upset. Oh, other people will get upset. Actually, I find that devotees say to me, don't speak like that, others will get upset. Actually, I generally find when I speak strongly, others don't get upset. But it's our own so-called devotees who get upset. They're the ones who become upset. And others appreciate, actually. At least this much that they appreciate, that this person is not speaking to flatter. At least that much they appreciate. So it's a big topic. I wrote in that book, My Memories of Prabhupada, I gave a whole section on it. If you want, you could read that. The numerous quotes, over 100 quotes from Prabhupada on how we have to speak strongly. So Hare Krishna, time's up. Isn't it? You have your classes, when do they begin? What time do they begin? No, the Bhakti Shastra.
It's at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. One person or that's one person.
I was really appreciating your point that we have to speak strongly, especially when you tell unless we speak Siddhanta, Anantras will not go. At the same time, I just want clarification. I've seen sometimes people are not ready to listen to Siddhanta. First, they want to be to have developed some faith.
First they want some massage.
Yeah.
First they want to develop some faith. So, alright. But when are you going to introduce Siddhanta? It may be, we have to see how, ultimately people have to be sincere. Recently I had a discussion with one of our devotees who's been preaching in an unorthodox style. He was preaching, talking about flying saucers and so many different things to attract a certain kind of audience. So he was saying it's good, he brought so many people to Krishna consciousness. So I was saying to him, yeah, but the thing is that they all believe all that. So it's not exactly Siddhanta. So you may bring them to Krishna consciousness, but I mean they may be chanting and this and that, but they got some ideas which are not according to Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Later I discussed with some other people who are quite aware of that kind of preaching and said that actually it's true, those people that came because of that preaching, they all believe all this stuff about flying saucers and all the things he was saying. And that when you try to, they came on a particular level due to a particular kind of preaching, and then when you try to give the straight thing, they go away. Because they weren't attracted to Siddhanta. They weren't attracted to the real thing. You were trying to come to their level instead of trying to bring them to your level. So you came together on their level. So you may do so, but unless you're able to bring them to the actual point and the actual truth, then you may increase the number of followers, but you may not increase the number of devotees. You may be starting something resembling an upper sampradaya. Just like there are so many upper sampradayas. What's wrong with them? You'll find the upper sampradayas, in Bengal, the Ao, Bao, Karta, Bhaja, Nera, Daravesh, all these names are given. What's wrong with them? They all, at least verbally, accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord. They wear tilak, engage in kirtan, quote Bhagavad Gita. What's wrong with them? In many cases, the difference between what they're doing and what we're doing isn't very great. Superficially, it doesn't seem very great. But it's so great that our acharyas have rejected them. In one case, instead of chanting Hare Krishna, loudly they chant Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Everything else they do is pretty much the same. Totally rejected. Sahajis, rascals. Why? There's some point of siddhanta, deviation. Everything else okay. Rejected. Others you'll find Gauranga Nagari. What's wrong with them? They do everything nicely. They have nice temple. They're even vegetarian, which is pretty rare in Bengal. But in their temples they have Gaur Vishnu Priya, which is also not necessarily wrong because Bhaktivinoda Thakur established at the Jodhpur. Gaur Vishnu Priya, but they have Gaur with a flute. Rejected. Because there's a mistake in Siddhanta. So Siddhanta is so important. It's very, very dangerous to compromise on Siddhanta. We may say we'll do so in the beginning, but at some point you have to very clearly establish it. And personally, I find the best place to establish is pretty much at the beginning. Because then you'll find at the beginning you'll get sincere people. If you don't, you may bring in so many insincere people. Then it becomes like kami society. You have to adjust with them. So better speak the truth. There are enough people. Anyway, what does it matter? We should speak. I'll tell you, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that many people used to say about him that he's such a great scholar, such a great Vaishnava, such a great tapasvi, that if he would only just adjust his message a little bit, then all the lakhs and lakhs of Vaishnavas in Bengal would accept him as their leader. He could have hundreds and thousands of disciples if only he'd be a little bit more lenient. One time, a school headmaster came to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and said, "You are preaching to us very difficult things. This don't eat fish and all this. So we are already fallen in the well. Why don't you give us an easy method to come out?" He said, "You are not asking me for an easy method to come. You want to pull me in the well also. You come up. Don't pull me down." So many times he used to say that it is my commitment to speak the truth. And even if the whole world goes against me, even if no one accepts what I have to say, even if people beat me or try to kill me, which they did, even if my own disciples don't accept what I have to say, even if they all go away one by one, leaving me alone, I will not stop speaking the truth, even for 1 second. That was his commitment. That should be our commitment. We're not here to please the public on their concocted, envious platform of sense gratification. We're here to please Krishna. If there's anyone who's sincere, they will take it up. If they're not, if there's no one who's sincere, what can we do? At least we should be sincere. At least save ourselves. Because once we start to speak all this concocted nonsense, then we also become polluted. So, Hare Krishna. I'll finish that.
I was thinking about it is convenient to you. Between 5 to 6:30 we could have a continuation of this person answers in the evening. And then 6:45 Gaurati and Conference.
Okay. You want to ask more questions on this topic?
Yes, on this topic. And after that, it's 1:15 to 9 in the evening. Maharaj will be speaking on good and bad association. So that is the topic for the meeting today. I will meeting. And of course, tomorrow morning also I request devotees to quickly come and camp. Immediately after Guru Puja, we could start at 7:40, 7:45. The class will start, we can end by 9:15, including the morning presentation. So we will get 1.5 hours time with Maharaj. Maharaj's time is very precious. So, in the same way, Maharaj, is it already to arrange a similar evening question answer tomorrow also? Sunday?
Yeah.
Right.
As I was saying, this topic I've elaborately discussed it in that book, My Memories of Srila Prabhupada, and hopefully we should be getting some copies by this evening. So, please take it. This is my main service, writing. So, I'm trying to distribute these books also. These particular books are for preaching to the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
If some neophyte devotee is there and he is chanting some 8 rounds or something, and he is also following some other paths also. So should we tell him strongly that to leave that, or we should tell that you can do that and do 8 rounds or like that?
You're asking about details of particular cases. I was speaking on a general principle. How it's applied in each individual case has to be seen. Without understanding the whole situation, I can't say exactly how we preach, what we should say in each situation. We have to see. Preaching is a function of the soul. It's not necessarily that such a certain thing should be said in a certain circumstance. We can't legislate it down to the smallest detail. We hear, we follow seriously, and we speak according to our realization. And exactly how that will come, how the super soul inspires in any situation, we have to see. If you're not sure what to do in preaching to any particular person, then you can refer to some senior devotee who knows that particular situation. But you're talking about someone who's chanting 8 rounds and following another path. How is that in the first place? How did that happen? What's going? Already something's wrong, right? How is that? One thing is very interesting I'm seeing is that often in our preaching, especially in India, we ask people to chant Hare Krishna and get them to chant rounds and everything without giving them any philosophy, hardly at all. But I always saw Prabhupada did it around the other way. He would speak philosophy first and then get people to chant. Because, like I was saying this morning, if you bring them in on one platform, it's difficult to change them later. Now, often we ask people chant, please start chanting 1 round, this, that, but it's just like your mother. How many rounds she's chanting? 1 or 2. She's chanting something. But I gave her a whole drubbing down about what a nonsense she is for being addicted to this ashuram rascal. But didn't make any difference. I'm trying to argue. They don't understand anything, so they're not really. That's why I was asked this similar question this morning, that we bring people in and then we can try to change them later. I would say from the beginning we should try to get them to understand what Shuddha Bhakti is. Otherwise, if we bring them in on the platform of Nama Parad, then we'll just be helping them to develop Nama Parad. There are many people who chant Hare Krishna or names of the Lord who are they're not getting practically no benefit from it. Sai Baba followers, they chant the names of Krishna, but it's all Nama Parad. They even chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It's all Nama Parad because they think that Sai Baba is Krishna. So how would you even get anyone to 8 rounds? What is the meaning of their 8 rounds? How did you get them so far without telling them the truth or taking the trouble to properly instruct them? They're not on a solid platform. It's diagnosing the disease late, very late. Should have been treated before.
जनरली जो थोड़ा आध्यात्मिक चीज करना चाहते हैं ऐसे लोगों को हमें उनके पास पहुंचे नहीं इससे पहले, तो वो किसी बात का फॉलो कर रहे हैं और वो कुछ तो करना चाहते हैं, मतलब भगवान के बारे में कुछ करना चाहते हैं, उनको पता नहीं भगवान कौन है, देवता क्या है, क्या है, लेकिन
मंदिर आओ, प्रसाद लो, सेवा करो,
लेकिन वो बचपन से उनके पिताजी ये सब कुछ वही कर रहे हैं और उनका उसके ऊपर फेत होता है। हम उनके पास जाते हैं, हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र का जप कीजिए, वो करते हैं, उनको स्ट्रांग बोल के उनको पैदा क्या करना है,
लेकिन मन बदलाना मुश्किल है। जो बिल्कुल अधार्मिक है, तो ऐसे लोगों को शुद्ध भक्ति कृष्ण भक्ति सिखाना और सहज होता है। जो एक दिशा में धार्मिक होते हैं लेकिन गलत रास्ते में है, तो ऐसे लोगों का दिमाग बदलाना और मुश्किल होता है। यो यम, वो क्या श्लोक है, यो यो यम यम तनुम भक्त श्रद्धे आचुत विचिति तस्याचलम श्रद्धम तनैव निधानम्। गीता में श्री कृष्ण कहते हैं कि जो दूसरे देव देवियों या दूसरे रास्ते में आकृष्ट होते हैं, तो ऐसे लोगों को गलत बुद्धि में देखते हैं और उनकी श्रद्धा में अचाल बनाते हैं, क्योंकि ऐसे लोगों की इच्छा ऐसे होती है। तो इसलिए युवा समाज में प्रचार करने और सहज होते, क्योंकि मन तज्ज है और निर्दिष्ट नहीं होते। तो कोई विशेष धार्मिक या तथाकथित धार्मिक रास्ता में नहीं है।
वो हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र जप करते तो
करते हैं, क्या बेनिफिट है, तो इतने ज्यादा नहीं होगा, क्योंकि अगर मतलब 10 नाम अपराध होते हैं।
नहीं, उस स्थिति में अगर वो जप कर रहे हैं और उधर भी
अगर साधु संग
बनेंगे तो वो भी छोड़ देंगे ना, हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र भी छोड़ देंगे वो।
नहीं,
क्या करना है,
देखना चाहिए करीब महामंत्र चलेगा या करीब वो गलत रास्ता चलेगा। ऐसे सुबह ऐसे बोला था कि अगर ऐसे लोगों को कभी भी कर्कश वचन नहीं कहेंगे तो वो दिमाग तो वैसे ही रहेगा। तो स्ट्रॉन्ग बोलने में तो रिस्क होते हैं, लेकिन अगर हम स्पष्ट वास्तविक सत्य कभी नहीं कहेंगे तो उसको बदलाना तो कभी नहीं होगा। तो संभव है अगर हम स्ट्रॉन्ग रहेंगे तो संभव है कि मन में कुछ लगेगा। कुछ लगेगा तो करीब हमारे और नजदीकी आएगा या करीब दूर जाएगा, लेकिन कुछ ना कुछ होगा।
तो ये सिचुएशन देखकर उनको बात करना उनका
हाँ, देखना चाहिए। तो सभी स्थिति तो एक ही नहीं है, तो एक हर विशेष स्थिति में तो विचार करना चाहिए। लेकिन मेरा साधारण परामर्श है कि स्पष्ट कहो और भगवान में विश्वास करो। देखिए प्रभुपाद का जीवन भगवत चरित्र में तो कितनी बार प्रभुपाद ऐसे स्ट्रॉन्ग बोलते थे, You are not God, you are dog. एक बात है कि प्रभुपाद बहुत कम लोगों को डायरेक्टली तुम रास्को, तुम बदमाश ऐसे नहीं बोले, लेकिन लोग जो ऐसे बोलते थे कि जो भगवान में विश्वास नहीं है तो वही रास्को ऐसे बोलते। तो लोग जो प्रभुपाद को बोलते नहीं भगवान को विश्वास नहीं है, और प्रभुपाद ऐसे बोलते लोग जो भगवान को विश्वास नहीं करते तो वैसे बदमाश है। तो स्पष्ट नहीं करते कि तुम बदमाश हो।
Sometimes we see that so many people read the Prabhupada books, so many books in Bhagavad Gita, but they understand also philosophy. They speak themselves, but they don't chant.
They don't chant.
Yes. Because in Bhagavad Gita and every book Prabhupada written that to chant Hare Krishna mantra. They read it but they don't chant.
So, क्या प्रश्न है? What is the reason for this? The reason is Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmane Vaishnave Swabham Punyavatam Rajam Vishvasa Naiva Jayate. Who has got Swalpa Punya, their Vishwas in Mahaprasad, in Govinda, in the holy name and in the Vaishnavas does not arise. But they will chant in course of, if they are reading Prabhupada's books, in course of time they will chant. It may take some time. But their bhagya has still to become manifest. Now their bhagya is in the supta avastha. That will come. This Bhakti Thakur describes this. Chaitna. There's stages of there's supta chaitna, then Vikasa Chaitanya and Prafullit Chaitanya, different stages. Now the Chaitanya is almost ready to awaken. There's a question, you want to ask a question? Anyone know what? Please. Mike.
My question is, my family are encouraging demigod also. I told them that demigod Ganesh is not supreme personality of Godhead. I told them, but they are not listening to me. They are telling me what.
No, generally, you see, the parents don't listen to the children.
How can I cannot say that you are fool.
No, it's not 100% required that you call everyone a fool.
I showed them Bhagavad Gita also.
That's better, you show them Bhagavad Gita. That's better.
While I'm distributing books, I meet many different kinds of people.
No, when we're distributing books, we don't call people fools. We let Prabhupada call them fools by giving them books.
Yeah, but they are telling me that is a propaganda. Krishna is not.
It is propaganda, but it's propaganda for the truth.
Yeah,
no, the thing is, you can't expect everyone to listen to what you say, especially You see, in the Bible, I believe it said that, or anyway, it's an English saying, and many of the English sayings come from the Bible, that a prophet is never respected in his own village. Because just like Prabhupada, he went all over the world. When he came back to Calcutta, all his family members, relatives, they thought, oh, it's our friend, our relative, and they spoke of him. They didn't. So what to speak of you? Anyway, you see, when we have broader vision, we see that the whole world is our family. So then you can preach to the whole body. There are so many people. If your family members don't take it up, what to do? There are so many other people to preach to. It's a big world. There are many people. Some people are more willing to take up Krishna consciousness than others. So better we concentrate our efforts on people who are more willing to take it up.
Maharajji, when I meet very Christian, they say that Jesus is God, and they give me the example, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. But I don't know about that.
Christians, what's the use? Speaking to Christians.
Listening,
If you want to discuss, you can discuss, but they won't. But they're not listening anyway. There are so many things. Holy Spirit, where in the Bible even is said anything about Holy Spirit? It's just something invented. So many things. Tell them that Jesus was a vegetarian. There's good evidence. But they won't listen. So why waste your time?
while distributing books, I don't know.
Yeah, they come, so you say, please take this book. If they say no, you say, God bless, and go on to someone else. That's nice. You please distribute Prabhupada's books as much as possible. But don't be disturbed because most people don't take them.
One group of Christians, they gave me Bible freely. They are telling me to read this. These are God words. You take it freely, keep it home. I don't want your books. They are saying. So I don't know, I don't understand. I gave the book back to them and I told them I'm not going home. I don't have it.
Very good. Then,
Maharaj, please forgive me if the question is not appropriate. While preaching to congregation, we have seen, as you were telling in the morning lecture, that many of the families, they are already engaged in some so-called philosophical organization like Asaram Bapu or Kalki or whatever. We know that it's nonsense. But while preaching to them, sometimes it helps to understand what they are following. We do not know. I mean, most of us, like myself, I believe, have directly come into ISKCON. We have absorbed the philosophy and we are following. But we may not know about what they are actually doing. So, could you please elaborate
what are they following actually? Is there anything to follow in these organizations? They're not really following anything. They just have his picture on the wall and that's about it. There's nothing to follow. That's why it's easy to get followers, if there's nothing to follow. So try to understand. It's easy. You can get their whole philosophy in 5 minutes. It's called Avsarvad. Avsarvadi. They take advantage of people's foolishness and semi-spiritual sentiments and become a big guru and enjoy name and fame for a short time. That's all. There's nothing there. They're all very shallow. These are all for very shallow people. All this. Asharam, art of living, Osho. There's nothing there. There's nothing. Anyone who's even slightly genuinely interested in spiritual life can understand this is all cheating. Actually, I first saw books, Prabhupada's books. I must have been about 15 at the time. I was at school. And my best friend at school showed them to me. He said, I got some of these books to show you. I immediately rejected it. I didn't even want to look at them. I said, I know about all these Indian gurus. They're all cheaters. Don't show anything to them. Because I hadn't gone deeply into any of them. There were a few Indian gurus in the Western side. It was just so plain. They're just complete cheaters. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then later on, by Krishna's grace, I again got the opportunity to see one of Prabhupada's books, and then I understood there's something substantial here. So I should try to find out more about it. Otherwise, you see many people, they're disgusted with religion altogether. And one reason is because these people are such cheaters, and any person with any people who are a little intellectually, who are actually thoughtful, they can understand this is all cheating. His ashram is for that's for the people with absolutely no brains at all. And this art of living guy, he's for pseudo-intellectuals. And Osho is also for pseudo-intellectuals. They get a more, what you might call a more high-class kind of people. But people who are actually sincere, when they get Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada said that, the people who are sincere will appreciate these books. That's why we always have to push on this book distribution. And that's another reason why we have to speak clearly. It's not that in every circumstance and every time you meet someone you have to, it's not a regulated principle that you have to use words like rascal, fool, nonsense. Sometimes people are surprised when I give a lecture and I don't say things like that because they think that I have to. It's not that you have to all the time. But the point is that by doing so, then more sincere. If we do actually ourselves sincerely, if we're doing it with ourselves a sense of anger or wanting to anger, that may be anger for the sake of Krishna, there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're doing it for our own aggrandizement or to show I'm better than you, if we're not properly motivated, if we speak strongly, then it won't have any effect. It will only have a bad effect. But if we're actually sincere to serve Krishna and we speak strongly for the benefit of others, then we'll find that people who are more sincere, they will appreciate. They will separate the sincere from the insincere. And if we have a policy of only speaking in a manner in which we assure the people they won't get upset, then we won't attract sincere people. We'll attract insincere people. If we don't speak the truth clearly, then we'll attract people who are not interested in the truth, who are interested in spiritual sense gratification. Religious, no, it's not spiritual, religious sense gratification. That means the feeling, nice feeling, I'm good, God loves me, everything is very nice. These people who want to be, we can say they're pious, but they're not very sincere. We'll attract such people. And then we'll have all kinds of problems in our society because people are not actually sincere. They come for other reasons. And then they'll be arguing over position and so many different things, and fighting with each other. Because they have another motive.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Was that done with the, he's doing that? He's making a scholar.
Maharaj, we have been told that while preaching, tell the do's and don't tell the don'ts initially. That you should chant, you should associate, you should have prasad. And do not talk at all about giving up coffee or tea or liquor or whatever. So I just want to know like...
It may be. It may be that if people get a taste for the holy names, they'll give up their taste for these things. But they may give up liquor, coffee, tea, but not give up their misconceptions. That's what I'm saying. Even I find there are initiated devotees who are still attached to demigod worship, their so-called, their previous guru. They still mean even the person's a complete Mayavadi. he still maintains some attachment. So giving up this gross sense gratification is more difficult than giving up this subtle sense gratification. That's why actually initiation means Diksha Kale Bhakta Kare Atma Samarpan. Diksha means that one surrenders oneself. And actually traditionally in Diksha, the disciple, he makes a vow to surrender his life to Krishna. So, if one is still cultivating anarthas, deliberately cultivating anarthas, then actually they shouldn't take initiation. We should preach in a manner in which people will be benefited. Which means that they will give up all their material attachments and surrender to Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, in the morning you said that if you are preaching to different platforms and attacking a certain kind of audience, it is very difficult to convert to get them to our platform.
The point I was making is that if we preach to people who are attached to a certain misconception, if we try to accommodate that misconception, we make our presentation that Krishna consciousness is something like their misconception, then they may come with us, they may start to come with us, but then when you bring it out, that you have to give this thing up, then it'll be very difficult. Then you have to see if they're actually ready to give that up. I gave a particular example. You could see. Well, yeah, there's a whole thing actually. Someone wrote a book about how the flying saucers, they actually come from the center of the earth and so many different things, which is unverifiable by any means, by guru, sadhu, shastra, science, whatever. So a certain kind of person might be attracted, but then later on, if you tell them, well, actually, this is all nonsense, I just said that to attract your attention, then they may not accept that. Risks can be taken in preaching. Risks, I would say that one risk is preaching strongly. Another risk is to mix with people on their own level. Prabhupada did it to some extent. He went among the hippies. He never became a hippie. But he spoke in their language, to some extent, or at least his original followers did. They said, stay high forever. Because the hippies' idea of happiness was becoming high, which means to get intoxicated. Especially on drugs, especially this LSD and marijuana. Especially LSD. So their idea was to get high. So they compared Krishna consciousness to staying high forever. So, an expert preacher, they know how to introduce Krishna consciousness according to different people's mentalities. But at the same time, we have to be very careful not to hide the truth or compromise the truth. We should never think that we can give anything less than the truth and that people will actually be benefited. We may give it in gradual installments. That's also possible. But if we don't give it in total, then we're cheating. And those gradual installments shouldn't be too gradual either. Otherwise it never happens. People get stuck on a lower level. And often this shock treatment, it's also very effective actually. Sometimes by speaking strongly, you can, one method is to go gradually, step by step, you try to take them, it's very difficult, they remain attached, this, that. You're keeping them in an attached stage and trying to make them gradually unattached. So sometimes it's just like a surgery, it's quick, but it's painful, but it has a quick effect. So sometimes people can just change. Just by, everything, all their anarthas can be revealed at once. By understanding, yes, actually I'm a rascal. Everything I was thinking is all wrong. That's one approach, that you just immediately, instead of people retaining their puffed up attitude that actually I know so much, and alright, I'm just learning something from these Hare Krishna people, but actually my old idea is good. If they immediately understand, yes, I don't know, then they can immediately come to the platform of Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. If you're taking people along step by step, that means unless they come to the point of understanding that they don't understand, then they can never actually become a Shishya. Shishya means they have to be ready to take the required instruction. They should be ready to take whatever is taught. That is a Shishya. So if the Guru has to play games with the disciple and flatter them, that's not good. That's not Guru-disciple relationship. If the disciple is not prepared to be chastised, he's not a disciple at all. Shishya means who takes the shasan. So if the Guru is simply flattering the disciple, then it's not at all a Guru-disciple relationship. Of course, now we're talking about Guru-disciple relationship, and we're talking about general preaching. And so then there may be a difference there. Well, you can't expect everyone just to become your disciple. But the point is that if we are preaching and we're talking about people taking up Krishna consciousness, following regulated principles, getting initiated, they have to be disciples. If they have their own idea, then they're not disciples at all. Prabhupada said disciple means like becoming a clean slate. Get rid of all your old wrong ideas. To me, it sometimes seems like some kind of wishful thinking, that you just tell people all the good things and you never tell them all the bad things, and then they just kind of realize all by themselves. How does it happen? It's just like, they have a cancerous growth, and you just give them some aspirins, and then you just kind of hope that it'll go away. I mean, how is it going to work? Some kind of strong treatment is needed. It's just, to me it just seems like a lot of sentimentalism, thinking that, well, you just be nice to them, and then smile at them, and give them prasadam, and then, all by themselves, they'll realize that all the misconceptions they've had for millions of lives are all rubbish. How is that going to happen? Yeah, whoever's got the mic has got the adhikar, I guess. Or even, you might say the things like indirectly. But even that, if people have got like a cancerous growth, if you just kind of mention indirectly, they see, well, actually, we're not really very much in favor of worshipping the demigods. If you put it in very indirect kind of language, and then the people say, oh, okay, they won't take it very seriously. But if you say that all this demigod worship is simply an obstruction to Krishna consciousness, people are addicted to this, they can never go back to Godhead, it's simply another form of envy of Krishna, and they might start to think about it. If you make it a light kind of thing that, actually in Krishna consciousness, we don't really worship demigods. And Krishna's beautiful, and he's nice, and he's playing the flute and all this kind of thing. And just kind of, why be embarrassed? Tell what needs to be told. So many misconceptions, millions of misconceptions. Every devotee, neophyte devotee means their whole outlook on life is contaminated. Prakrita bhakti, that's called materialistic. It's an oxymoron, it means a contradictory term. You'll find a neophyte devotee there. They're interested in the cricket match and what else? They think that all different sadhus are good. So many misconceptions. All the different sadhus are good. And they can't distinguish between who is a genuine devotee and who isn't. As long as one is in a neophyte condition, one cannot make advancement, and you're always in danger of being totally captured by Maya. It's a very dangerous condition. You see people, they may be coming to ISKCON and chanting a little bit, but then some Swami, Yogi, bogus Ananda, they may be coming and they'll speak very nicely about Krishna and cry a little bit and sing a few songs, and people say, oh, what a great devotee. And when we go to ISKCON, you see there's no bhav. You see it's just all this Bhagavad Gita, but this bogus Ananda Swami, he sings so nicely and cries and tells nice stories, because they have no discrimination. So how long are you going to wait? When are you going to give them a reconditioned mind? When are they going to know the truth? Otherwise, as long as they're addicted to all this sentimental pseudo-bhakti, then you can't get Shuddha Bhakti. You'll forever remain cheated. You heard from who or what or why or when? You heard from Shastra?
From some devotees.
Some devotees. Where did they hear from? What is the original source of this statement you're about to make? What is the original source of this statement? Many times we hear this, I have heard. And then we hear some fantastic speculation. So I have heard, this is supposed to make it sound authorized. Who have you heard from?
This is another way of thinking about preaching. But there are 2 points. When we speak strongly, it often destroys the faith of people.
No, they don't have any faith, so how can you destroy it?
For example,
they don't have faith. There's no question of destroying their faith, because they don't have any faith.
For example,
they may have some sentimental appreciation that they see you in orange and they see Osho people in orange and they see Ramakrishna people in orange and they think they're all sadhus. That's not faith. That's misplaced piety. That's all. It's not faith. You may offend their sentiment. That is true. That is a risk that you take. But I've seen many times that people who I've offended, they feel offended. Later on they come around. Because immediately their ahankar is challenged. And then afterwards they think about it. So, like I said, you have to say in every situation. It's not necessarily that everyone I meet, I tell them, you are this, you are that, or whatever. But again, the same thing, that you can play along with people for some time and pretend that what they're doing is okay. But at some point you have to tell them. When is that point going to come? And if, just like for instance, in Dubai, before everything was developed, it was just in money before he was initiated in his flat. So they were asking about, I was the only sannyasi going there at that time also. So there were these Sai Baba people coming, and to those satsangs, and they're asking me, well, should we allow them to come or not? They're saying, well, while they're with us, they just do what we're doing, and they chant Hare Krishna. They're saying their whole presence is simply polluting the atmosphere. And if you don't speak against Sai Baba, and they're coming, and they're Sai Baba followers, and unless you make it clear to everyone coming that this Sai Baba is a rascal, then everyone will think that you also appreciate Sai Baba, and you also accept, because they're Sai Baba followers, you don't say anything against them, so that means you must accept it. Monam sammati lakshanam. So, Mani was telling me, you don't say anything, and of course I did say things. And believe it or not, one of the ladies who was coming, she changed, at least externally. She gave up Sai Baba worship and became an initiated devotee. She didn't get initiated by me. I guess she thought it was too heavy or something. But no, anyway, she told anyway. It doesn't matter. I won't tell you. No, I'll tell it. She told that in her dream that I didn't know anything about it. And I was chastising her that why are you following this sadhana, and then she gave it up. So sometimes Krishna arranges like that. If you don't have a very, maybe hate is the wrong word, but if you don't have an extremely strong dislike, and unless you're agitated and feel most uncomfortable and angry against all these rascals who are misleading people, then you can't actually be a devotee. It's just like if Shishupal is standing there insulting Krishna and you're saying, Joto mot toto pa. Shishupal, we shouldn't hurt his feelings. See, he's also a nice man. Then you become a rascal yourself. It means you don't actually have devotion to Krishna. If your tolerance goes so far as to tolerate all these people who are cheating others, then you haven't actually, where's your love for Krishna? So love for Krishna doesn't mean ringing a bell and smiling and offering flowers. That's there. But we also have to fight for Krishna.
When content with Swami spoken, the people quote it to others out of context. What happens is these people get a permanent bias against ISKCON?
Maybe not permanent. It may be for some time. People will know we're different. They'll know that will be very good if people know that we hate Osho, that we hate Sai Baba. That'll be very good if they know that we're different. Otherwise they think, well, ISKCON, Sai Baba, Osho, it's all the same. Better that they know that we're different. Better they think like that. I would say so. Unless you want, to be, unless you just want cheap popular respect, that everyone say, oh, ISKCON very good, Osho very good, Sai Baba very good, everything very good, very good, very good, very good. It's good. They should know that we're different. We're against all this nonsense. They may not understand why, and they may dislike us for that. At least they should know we're different. And many people will appreciate that. Some people who are rascals, they'll say, well, you have a permanent bias. But others will think, oh, these people are so straightforward. They're speaking the truth. They're not just, the other people, they'll think, Sai Baba, they're a rascal. Osho, they're nonsense. And Hare Krishna, they're all the same. They're another same. That's what I told you just now. When I first saw Prabhupada's books, I thought, I don't want to see. Because I already saw so many Indian gurus, they're all cheaters. So let people know that we're different. Our aim is not to be have popular acclaim. Some people may dislike us for that. If some people don't dislike us, I would say we're not preaching properly. We're not speaking the truth. This is a strong misconception which is practically all pervasive in the ISKCON world today. And maybe I'm one of few who are saying like this, and maybe you can have a vote and say I'm wrong or whatever you like. But if our aim is only to that all the public will like us, then we're not properly representing the Parampara. And we're not properly preaching Krishna consciousness. Rather, as Prabhupada has pointed out in one purport, if the demons are disturbed by our preaching, it is a sign that our preaching is having some success. So it'll be very good if the Sai Baba people and the Osho people and everyone else hates us. Very good. And if they don't hate us, there's something wrong. They should know that we are their enemies. Prabhupada writes in one purport that the aim of this Krishna conscious movement is to kill all the impostors who are imposing as incarnations of God. That doesn't mean we physically kill them, but we should kill the rascal cheating by preaching the truth. You are not God, you are simply a rascal. And some people will get upset. That's true. But that's another misconception maybe we have from our Kami days. That our parents taught us you should be very nice, you should be very good, don't upset anyone. But that doesn't necessarily come in Krishna consciousness. As preachers of Krishna consciousness, our aim is not to be, we don't necessarily subscribe to the values of middle class India. The Vaikuntha values are different. So to be middle class India means you're nice, you deal with people respectfully, politely. That's good in general dealings. But we can't, for the sake of preaching, we can't stick to that, and our preaching should suffer. Our aim is not simply to be nice, respectful, polite and all these things. Our aim is to speak the truth about Krishna. And if people don't like that, that is their misfortune. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they wanted to kill him. He came from a middle class Indian background. But he openly spoke against all different forms of cheating. And many people, they disliked it. He never stopped. Prabhupada, you see this, Prabhupada told Giriraj Maharaj that my spiritual master never compromised, I never compromise, and my disciples should also never compromise. So yeah, people should know. It'll be very good, actually, if people know that our aim is to kick on Darwin's face. Let people know it. They may say bad things. Let them. It's good, it's better they say bad things about us than they say nothing about us. Prabhupada said that. In Germany there was so much propaganda against our movement. The devotees are thieves, murderers, kidnappers and so many things. And it was very difficult for our devotees. People would spit on their face and so many things in the street. But they were distributing more books. They just went on distributing more and more and more books. And when Prabhupada was asked, he said, yes, this part of this, actually it's good. Because they think that all the time they're talking about Krishna and they're thinking about Krishna. As a result of that, you see most of the young people of the country, they actually liked our movement due to all the bad propaganda against it. Because they thought if the government is against us so much, there must be something good about it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In India, like when we preach,
people think a sadhu means someone who just smiles. We should show. Sadhu, this Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, the duty of a sadhu is to hold a knife, just like someone with the bali, with the goat. And his duty is to chop, to cut away all the misconceptions. The sadhu is not simply holding a flower. The people who want to be cheated, they have made a stereotype that a sadhu should simply be someone who smiles. You come to him, he smiles, he blesses you, you are very nice, you go away, and you feel nice. But rather, a sadhu should be someone you come to, and he tells you why you are such a rascal. That you are not nice at all. You have to reform your life. That is the real duty of a sadhu. That you are in Maya, you have to change your life. Mostly the sadhus you see, they'll come and... I remember years ago, it struck me, I was in Bangladesh, many years ago. Somehow I was in some village and there was some Gosai, some Kula Guru, so-called Vaishnava. So somehow I was sitting there with him, I don't know how on earth, but anyway. Some old widow came up and said, "Oh, I have pain in my eye, I'm losing my eyesight." And he said, "Don't worry, God will look after you." And she went away feeling somewhat better. And I thought, what a rascal this man is. That the woman is old, she's on the verge of death, he should tell her, yes, your eye is failing, this is a sign that death is coming, you should prepare now, chant Hare Krishna. Get out of Maya. But he's not actually, you see, these people, they're not actually interested in other people's welfare. They're just interested in maintaining that person's ahankar, that person will think, I am very nice, and his own ahankar, that he wants that people will, oh, he's a nice sadhu, very nice. And everyone will respect him as being very nice. This means we are attached to our own sense of mental comfort. We're not actually interested in benefiting others. If we're actually interested in benefiting others, then we won't care what others think about us. We'll care what others think about us. Yes, we should maintain our proper behavior as a sadhu. So if they cannot criticize on the basis of your character, if you tell people that you're doing this rascal, and you're also a rascal, then they should complain. But if they see that you yourself, you have nothing to gain from them, I don't need your donation, I don't need your adoration, I have nothing to get from you. I'm following these principles very strictly, has nothing to do in his life but serve Krishna. So then people, by your behavior, they will respect that. That you're not, they will be shocked. And they'll say, I never saw any sadhu like this before. And then they'll start to think. In the beginning they may be shocked, but they'll start to think. It will have an effect. And if we do follow strictly, and we preach according to Shastra, then it will have an effect. We want to change people's lives. Even, you see, Prabhupada would often, even his disciples, even they didn't have this, may not be any gross philosophical misconception or whatever, he chastised them for very small things. That way I'm failing. I don't chastise my disciples much. That I'm not being merciful enough to them.
In India, while preaching, there is an idea that some people will become devotee, others will remain well-wishers. And these well-wishers, they give money, they come on festivals, take prasad. So, although we know that they are not following the principles correctly, they are giving money, they are taking prasad from us, so we don't preach to them. Although we are taking money from them, they are invited to the temple. But we are preaching to some other class of people who like to listen. So is it alright to take the money and...
Again, we have to see in individual cases. There are certain kinds of people who are on that platform, that they like pious, they're pious and they like the sense, I am a donor. So maybe for them, the best service they can do at this stage is to give some donation, and then we can use it to preach to people who are more sincere. But it may be a misconception also to think that these people can't become devotees. There are many people who they were approached first of all for donations who actually became serious devotees. So why should they be denied Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy?